Okay, so back at it again. Like I said, wanted to show you guys a basic charting setup. So if you don't already have it all dialed in, there on the previous video, you'll see all the basics, the chart list, or I'm sorry, the currency pair list. So you can go ahead and do that. You'll see all the indicators I spoke about and how to set those up or whatnot. Pretty straightforward. You click on this button right here, indicators and strategies, and then you place all your stuff over top. Um, I might make a video later, like a basic, another tutorial video where I actually go through and build out an entire chart. But this is the moment y'all have been waiting for. So without further ado, let's actually go through a couple of pairs and kind of look at the basics of what a setup might look like. So I like to personally use all time frames except for a couple of these, most of these time frames to trade from. And what I mean by that is not necessarily the entry, but I like to have a good understanding of the direction that I think a trade is going to go in. So you put it this way. On the daily, it might have a certain direction, the weekly might match, and the monthly might match. So if that's the case, it might be fair to say that long term, the trade will probably go in a certain direction. Now, if the intraday says a different direction, then maybe it's time for me to just kind of watch the intraday and wait for it to also mimic or lean towards where the longer term is pointing me. There's a couple different ways you can approach that, and in the IP they talk about that. Being patient. You can either, depending on your personality, right? This is why it's important to get reps in. Um, you can either get in a short-term trade, going the opposite direction of where the long-term says. If the charts line up a certain way, then you can actually make quick, daily trades, like day trading in that way. But what I like to do personally is kind of more of a swing, which means I want my intraday to kind of line up or at least show a reversal that leans towards where my long term is telling me. Okay. Okay, so let's get into this. On the daily chart, again, I like to do this personally. I'm going to actually click off the ones that I thought I was going to cover and just kind of go through all pairs. So this is just, I'm going to label the video too that it's just the daily. So on the daily, I'm going to go through every single one of these pairs and try to look for setups. If I see something that looks like I want to touch it maybe, then I'm going to actually click this and mark it. And obviously this is a good one. Why? Because I like to look for MACD divergence. This is a more advanced technique that they talk about in IP. And what that means is I look for these, for lack of a better way to say it, these humps. And I'm not talking about that Fergie shit from way back in the day. I'm talking about these right here. So if you notice on the MACD, these are level. This dotted line is level and it connects those two humps. However, these two humps are not connected. They're not the same. This is lower than this one. This one's higher. So what that means is MACD said, okay, this has some downward pressure. The real chart, the price action said, okay, we're higher than there. So when I look at that, I say, well, you know, if we push it to right here, this is what it looked like when it actually happened, right? Like this. If I look at that and I know that, and this is how I've traded in the past, you even see an example right here. Boom, 1, 2. Here, let me mark these. 1, 2. These aren't the same. The level isn't the same. This says even, like a M shape maybe. And this is slanted upwards. The right shoulder of it is higher. this still tells me, all right, this needs to go down. It wants to go down. There's pressure to go down. And these candlesticks are also telling us, yeah, it's about to go down. Right here, this doji, and then you have this form right here. I'm reluctant to call it anything because I don't know the exact correct term. So while I'm teaching you guys, I'm going to have to brush up on the technical side of things. But this engulfs this red candle, and therefore I would be looking for an entry right here to take it downwards. Why right here? Because it's below, slightly below the green candle. And that's where I would want to enter. Okay, that's just a basic setup. I'm skipping ahead, but okay, let's look at this. MACD wise, there's been a reaction here, and the implications are that it's going to go down, and it did. Okay, let's take another look. I'm going to compare this one and this one. So if I compare here and here, again, same level just about, but on the chart, those are two different, very different levels. This is much higher. So I'm looking for signs of weakness that says, all right, it's about to break down. This candle definitely is kind of something that I would look at and say, okay, maybe there's going to be a reaction downwards. I can't necessarily, I personally wouldn't get in under the green candle here. I would really just kind of eyeball it and look for an intraday. I'd go flip over to intraday to try to find an entry here, as would as I would also on this, obviously. But sometimes you can line up an entry based on the daily, and then you go into your intraday or longer term, and then you go into the intraday, and you actually make it real. You actually tighten it up. You actually get more precise. That'll make sense later. We'll talk much more in depth. So you guys bear with me on this. I'm going to mark this one too because this is at an equal level. But the chart is saying something completely different. This isn't always going to be the case, but for me, when I notice it, when it happens, it is something that, is kind of worth noting for me. Okay, and then I look here. It's not as high, and it's also not as high here. So maybe things are getting um, back into equilibrium here. Who knows? I don't know. And that's the thing about trading is you don't always have to know. But I do think that MACD, the divergence, is kind of subsiding. So we look at these two, and they're kind of equal with what's here. These two right here are kind of equal with what's on the chart. You see what I mean? So what I like to trade is MACD divergence. Divergence meaning it diverts from what you would expect it to be. So that's one pair. Try to flip through the rest of these a little bit quicker. I like this because there was a breakdown and now it's kind of sitting at a key level, this yellow area. You see right here, this crowding of price action. That means that this level could have been, somewhat of some kind of significance. There was a huge break downwards here in the past. Not sure if that's going to happen here, but definitely something worth noting. Also, again, I like to look at MACD and kind of look at those levels and see if we've had some respect there as far as MACD goes, or like some wild swings when it comes to divergence. This is something worth watching for a downwards move or an opportunity to get in. So I do want to look at the intraday charts later. So I'll always mark it whenever I want to dig a little bit deeper. And that's not even for trade. I'm probably not going to trade this right here, but I definitely want to look and see what the setup might look like. These are key levels that I drew in the past, and we're here. And again, I'm looking for something that's going to lean towards downwards. So I can take this down and probably stop at 50 EMA. 50 EMA is, you know, industry wide, at least from what I've been taught. 50 EMA is a good profit target. So if I were to get in right here, I would take it and short it down to where it meets this red line and then probably get out, or watch it very closely. If it rebounds off of that, get out at that point. But yeah, this is a pretty important level. If it breaks it quickly, or like by a large margin, like really heavy drop, and just flies right through it, then that's also a story that you probably want to pay attention to. Okay, into the next. Let me cut this off. I'm sorry about that. Okay, so NZD USD. Now we're looking at that one. MACD is kind of matching here. This looks like, to me, I love this setup. It looks like it went down and then it started leveling off around here. Now it's leveling off. It came back. Now it's wanting to go back up, maybe, after a large drop. This pullback right here was gorgeous, right into the 50 EMA and also 618 Fibonacci level. Don't worry, we're going to dig into all that stuff. We got plenty of time for that. But, okay, this is a great example also of MACD playing a large role. So I'm going to draw this line. And no, it's not perfect, but it's representative. And I just want to show you for an example. Okay, let's do that. See that white line? Okay, now let's draw a white line that kind of goes along with this. Whatever, it doesn't have to be perfect. This is just for you to see. This was going down. MACD was kind of sideways. And you can even kind of see a triangle form on MACD, like a wedge shape here. I don't think they technically call that a wedge. That's why I hesitate. Maybe more like a triangle shape here, right? So triangle meaning like that, but this is a little offset here. And so go there. Word to the Migos. Anyways, so it's a little offset. It's kind of like a triangle. You're going to see a downward movement, but you're also going to see on the MACD, it's a sideways movement. That's weird. That's not supposed to happen. Okay, so as soon as I see a breakout upwards, which is around here. No, that's not true. The breakout. So a breakout is like higher highs, higher lows, meaning that the peak increase, so high, which is here, this is higher than here, right? Let me draw it so you guys can see it here. This, the second one's higher than the first arrow, obviously. But when we look here and you look at that dotted line that lines up with it, this and this on the chart, the actual chart, is lower than the previous. And the MACD said something else. So maybe that story is, oh crap, a reversal's coming. Let me position myself. And then it becomes a matter of how do I set up my time? How do I understand where the most profitable, probable entry might be, and kind of going through it like that. So that's really, really interesting to look at and kind of see how it plays out. So we'll dig deeper into that. A little sideways here with the price action, choppy as hell, but kind of within a range. So probable that you could pick a place to kind of get in there. We'll leave that alone though. It's not the best learning opportunity in the world. A lot of what I like looking for with certain pairs, so all of these that start with NZD, I like to kind of see if they're all doing the same thing, like posturing for the same thing. This one's kind of hanging up. All these guys are kind of higher, coming off of a recent, lower point, which is kind of interesting to look at and to realize, right? Recent low point coming off of that, they're going up. This guy doing the same thing, recent low point going up. And so just a piece of advice to kind of keep in mind. You don't necessarily want to trade all of those. Just like USD, it was the same story. You can reverse the video and kind of see that. But I like to pick the best of the pair. And I learned that from Irek Piekarski. He talks about that, or used to back in the day, is when you have several in the same pair that are all kind of positioned, you pick the best of the bunch. And there's a way to do that. We'll get into that later. I don't see anything here. And I'm looking for like a really healthy setup, something that says, okay, I should jump in there. And these are based on my own personal strategy and how I look for things. So I'm going to have a separate video that is not me real time going through and showing you what I look at, but actual old trades, old strategy, old setups that you can kind of see immediately. But there is some understanding that needs to go into this first, so I don't want to rush the process. Do not rush the process, trust me. So all these GBP pairs were kind of not showing me anything crazy on the daily chart that I really wanted to investigate further. Okay, Euro USD. Let me make sure I'm not missing something here. I can usually get through these pretty quick. Sometimes I double, triple check. But sometimes you miss a trade. Everybody does. It's not a big deal. It's just making sure that you trade stuff that pops out at you. If it doesn't pop out at you, you probably shouldn't trade it anyways, because you might be trying to force it, man. CHF JPY. Nothing really there. And don't get it twisted. Sometimes you go through all 28 pairs and there's just not anything that makes sense, that lines up with what you are looking for. That happens, And the faster you can accept that, I finally did. It took me a while personally for Forex, and it was even worse with options. But with Forex, it's a lot like that. And let me see here. Okay, so that's the end of the line there. And then I got USO. That's an ETF based on oil. We're not trading that right now, but yeah, it really fell off a cliff here, it looks like. Anyways. So, and then the DXY, dollar index, SPX, SPY are both S&P 500 based. One's a spider, one's not. That's a whole different ball game. And part of the reason why I got in trouble, man, so a word to the wise is kind of stick to, one segment while you can, early on especially, and just really dig into it and master it. And then let's go on to something else, So let's think about, sports analogies. I always like to use that. Like I said, there's not a lot of athletes throughout all of time, all of history that have played more than one professional sport at the same time. You're thinking like Deion Sanders, maybe Bo Jackson, people like that, but there hasn't been anybody who's like a standout star in both. So just keep that in mind. trade Forex, learn Forex. That's what I'm here for. If you're not really into it, go do options. But Forex is definitely super clean with the setups and a good place to become a good chartist just using technical analysis. Anyways, I'll be back with another video. This one did run a little long, and I'll probably have in the description minute markers so you guys can kind of jump around.